Psalm 97:7-8 When our God reigns. Psalm 97:7 Let all those be ashamed who serve graven images, who boast themselves of idols, worship him, all you gods. The idea is that they would be disappointed, confounded, and ashamed. They would find that these were not real gods, only creatures of their own imagination. Their trust in them was vain, and that their misplaced faith produced only a great folly by relying on that which could not aid them in any critical matter. They boast in their own idol gods as if they had any significant or redeeming power. This became evident during World War II by the Japanese who worshipped their emperor. The psalmist declares that the foolish idols of deceived men would, if they could, worship the true and living God. To avoid confusion by the psalmist's use of the Hebrew word Elohim, which is interpreted here as God with a small g, is defined from its context as those with authority or importance such as magistrates and sometimes even angels. When it is specifically used, in the plural sense, it speaks of the supreme God. The clause from verse 7 of Psalm 97 could be interpreted equally as worship him, all his angels. This understanding complies with Hebrews 1:5-6 which declares, For to which of the angels did he ever say you are my son, today I have become your father, or again, I will be his father, and he will be my son? 6 When he again brings his firstborn into the world, he says, and all God's angels must worship him. HCSB. Psalm 97:8, Zion heard this and was glad, and the daughters of Judah have rejoiced because of your judgments, O Lord. The first few times that Zion is mentioned it speaks only of the city of David, 2 Samuel 5:7 and 1 Kings 8:1, the area in Jerusalem where King David established his kingdom, but in time the name morphed into a reference for the temple or even the city of Jerusalem itself. The Hebrew name Zion, as it is most commonly translated, appears at least 157 times in the Bible. These 157 verses refer alternately to a Mount Zion, the daughter of Zion, virgin daughter of Zion, and many of them are just plain Zion. In Psalm 78:68, Mount Zion, the Mount of David's tabernacle, is described as being especially adored by the Almighty. Mount Zion, which he loved. And again, in Psalm 87:2, God expresses it as his favorite place in all Judah. The Lord loves the gates of Zion. A few verses ago we read that the converting heathen saw the glory of God and rejoice, but here it says that Zion heard, and was glad. There are two possible explanations for this difference. One is historical, when writing was as rare as were Word document readers. It was not uncommon for people to pass along documentation and historical events in the form of songs, psalms, and ballads. We read in 1 Samuel 18:5-7, David marched out with the army and was successful in everything Saul sent him to do. Saul put him in command of the soldiers, which pleased all the people and Saul's servants as well. 6 As the troops were coming back, when David was returning from killing the Philistine, the women came out from all the cities of Israel to meet King Saul, singing and dancing with tambourines, with shouts of joy, and with 3-stringed instruments. 7 As they celebrated, the women sang, Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. HCSB. We read another illustration of this in Exodus 15:19-21, when Pharaoh's horses with his chariots and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. 20 Then Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with their tambourines and danced. 21 Miriam sang to them, Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, he has thrown the horse and its rider into the sea. HCSB. However, I believe the intent of the inspired writer is far more prophetic, and the context bears this thought out. The psalmist is pointing to a time after the 7-year judgment and the remnant faithful Israelites are back in the land that has been long desolate. They heard of the judgments which God had shown among the enemies of his people, and they rejoice in the deliverance of God's people. The daughters of Judah, the congregation of believers heard that the gospel of Jesus was being preached to the whole world and his glory was being made known even to the heathen. But there is more. Women have a special occasion to rejoice at the spread of the true religion. It is only our Bible that has lifted her from a state of deep degradation, which has elevated her to be a companion instead of a slave. It has made her the intelligent wife and mother, rather than the mere inmate of a harem. When Christ reigns in Jerusalem, his counsel will cover all governments and societies, removing the worship of idols from the world. To that extent the worship of the true and living God, righteousness and justice will be an occasion of gladness for all people, women included.